Hey everybody, it's Eric from Support Adventure, and in this video I'm going to talk about how your MSP stack, no matter how great it is, will not help you unless you have your staff following procedures on how to use them. Now, a lot of the time in the MSP industry, we just sort of encounter companies that think that just since they have Connectwise or Autotask, they have the best RMM, and they're using IT glue, that automatically their MSP is going to be well organized. And a lot of the time, we find that not to be the case, because it's not the tools that you're using so much as how you're using them and the culture that you instill in your staff around how you use them. So I'm going to give some examples of what good use and bad use looks like, perhaps. So I'm sitting in Thailand today, going through the coronavirus lockdown here. I wish I could get a haircut right now, but everything else in my life is fine. And yeah, I mean, this is a really good time to tighten up your MSP and tighten up your sort of procedures and your staff culture around using the tools in an organized way so that your MSP runs like a machine. So that's why I'm making this video. And I want to talk about, first and foremost, the ticketing systems. Now, I do see a lot of benefit in getting things like Autotask and Connectwise as ticketing systems over the more simple ones like Freshdesk and Zendesk and all those other million ones that there are. Most of the serious clients that we have do use either Autotask or Connectwise. And the reason is because they allow a lot more useful manipulation of the tickets to happen both through workflow rules and through different statuses and scheduling and all that stuff, different reporting analysis and all that stuff. But if you don't have your staff using the ticketing system correctly, that's not going to help you. So you need to actually define how they're going to be using it. You can just say, hey guys, watch Connectwise University. Do you know how many videos there are in Connectwise University? And you know how many, which percentage of them are going to be relevant to what you're actually doing with Connectwise? Probably very few. So what you want to do is assemble a really nice sort of manual on the things on Connectwise they need to pay attention to on a constant basis. And the number one thing that you need to instill in people is proper statuses. Well, the top two, I would say, proper statuses and notes, proper notes. So proper statuses will allow you to look on the service desk and see where each ticket is at. And proper notes will give you the story of why it's there. So a lot of people have various different statuses they configure for that. I'm not going to comment on that as much as I'm going to comment as you should have enough scenarios documented in your statuses that there's not too much to choose from, but there's enough to represent any place where a ticket could be at. And in terms of notes, you want to look at ticket notes from a technical perspective, which is how the people are solving the problem, what the next steps for solving the problem technically is, and what sort of actions will be taken logistically, procedurally, next steps. And you also want ticket notes to be documented from a business perspective, steps that have been taken to service the customer. Like if you try to call them and you don't reach them, write that in the note, because if there's a complaint, nobody called me back. Well, you have a record that, yes, you were called back yesterday at 2 p.m. You didn't pick up. We left a voicemail. You didn't pick up. We sent an email. You didn't reply to it. So people have been trying to reach you. And, if you get the technicians to write proper notes, if there's ever a dispute, you can actually see what the technician did. Otherwise, it's their word against the client's word, and you're trying to figure out who to believe, actually. And that's a very sort of bad place to be as a manager. So yeah, proper ticket notes. And the gold of what we like to see in ticket notes with our technicians in Support Adventure that we assign to various MSPs is they should end with one of four things. Ticket resolved, hopefully. You finished it. Next steps, meaning the technician is taking the responsibility for the next steps to be taken by themselves, and they're hopefully scheduling a time for that. Waiting for means that they are waiting for the client or a third-party vendor to get back to them so that they can take the next steps from their side. And waiting for should have, a precise description of what they are waiting for. As next steps should have a precise description of the next steps, and waiting for should also have the next steps after the thing that they're waiting for happens, what they will do. And hopefully, if they're waiting for something, they should schedule a time to follow up if they have not heard back on that, just to keep the ticket going, keep it moving. And The last one is escalation required. That means that it's an internal issue why they cannot solve the ticket, meaning they don't have the skill set or they don't have the knowledge or documentation to complete the ticket, and they need to transfer it to someone else in the company who knows how to deal with this sort of thing. Lack of documentation is the most common reason for an escalation, but it can also be, simple. Somebody's got a blind spot around a certain issue and they need a second opinion. And so one of these four things, next steps, ticket resolved, escalation required, or waiting for, should be at the end of each ticket note in capitals. And if that happens, then it's a lot easier to see. When you see a ticket waiting for vendor, you can look on there and see the last line says waiting for vendor to do this. Or if the ticket has scheduled status, you can look on and see that the person is scheduled to call the user at 11 a.m. on Tuesday to do what? To do the next steps, which are, documented on the ticket, hopefully. And so if you get your staff into the habit of following these guidelines and you ensure that somebody's holding them accountable to following them, then basically, it will become a lot easier to make the best use of Connectwise, make the best use of workflow rules that let you know if a ticket has been waiting for more than 5 days in one of the waiting statuses. It will allow whoever's managing the service desk or supervising the service desk as a dispatcher to see where the tickets are at and what the next steps are that are going to be taken. And so then we'll move on to documentation. Now you can get IT Glue as a documentation system, the industry's sort of most popular solution for keeping good documentation for MSPs. But that won't really help you if the documentation is not put in the system in an orderly way. And what I mean by that is, like, if you put an Office 365 domain or admin password, an Office 365 admin password in there, you could call it email, you could call it Exchange Online, you could call it Office 365, you could call it cloud system, you could call it a bunch of different things. And when you're searching for that, you don't know which one it's going to be. You have to look down the list of passwords and hope that it'll actually be on the list, or you need to go onto the email thing and hope that it's a related item on there through IT Glue. So just because you have IT Glue doesn't mean that you're going to have things glued together that are useful. It doesn't mean that you're going to have stuff in the useful places where you can find them. So you need to establish a naming convention and a way of loading IT Glue information in there that is consistent, makes sense, and so on and so forth. Or else, basically, you're just going to have a mess, just like you did before in whatever system you were using before. I've seen companies that have very well-maintained templates for how their clients' documentation is stored in Google Docs. And that works great because they're all on board with keeping it in the same template, keeping it in the same orderly way, checking it periodically. That's another thing. You need to audit your documentation periodically. You need to add that as a task that somebody's responsible for auditing documentation, testing if the passwords work, seeing if the IP addresses are correct, seeing if the list of stuff that they're using is still up to date. And you need to make a way that whenever somebody's using the documentation or they find something that is not correct, they have a way of reporting that, and maybe a duty or an incentive to report that, so that then it gets addressed. So it can be create a ticket, or it can be make a form, like a Google form that turns into a spreadsheet, and then whoever's the documentation overseer can go through that list and make sure that all of those problems are sort of rectified. Yeah, and it's just like that. You need a system for using your ticketing system and make sure that somebody's holding the text accountable to it. And you need a system for using your documentation system and hold the text accountable to that. So just because you've got all the best systems doesn't mean that without the proper usage culture, you're going to be able to make use of the money you've invested in those great tools. So get it on paper, make checklists, make guides, make videos like this about how your staff are supposed to use it, and make sure everybody is following those. And that's pretty much it. And then with those tools and that organization, then you can have a finely tuned MSP that at least, the tickets are clear where they are, they're being moved along, scheduled forward, the documentation is there, people are checking that it's correct, and then it will be a lot easier for technicians from the bottom to the top of your organization to do their job, follow tickets, and it can be clear what they do if something isn't solvable as they wanted it to be, as they intended, and if documentation is missing, usually they can be one and the same issues. So thanks a lot. My name is Eric, Support Adventure. I hope you enjoyed this video. Subscribe to this YouTube channel. If you want to book a consultation with me, go to our website, so on and so forth. Hope you enjoyed this. Greetings from Thailand. Thanks a lot. Bye now.